Dad, can we go on it just one more time? Please. The excitement in young Liam Ford's voice echoed across the bustling walkways of Disneyland. It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation, a celebration of his 8th birthday at the happiest place on earth. The California sun blazed overhead as thousands of visitors navigated the park's magical landscape, their laughter mixing with the distant sounds of roller coasters and cheerful music. But within hours, that joyful atmosphere would be shattered by screams of a different kind. What started as a dream vacation would end in every parent's worst nightmare, forever changing not just one family, but the entire theme park industry's approach to ride safety. This isn't just another tragic accident story. It's a wake-up call about the hidden dangers lurking beneath the carefully crafted illusion of safety at the world's most beloved theme parks. It's about a system that prioritized efficiency over precaution, about warning signs that were dismissed as minor concerns, and about a little boy who paid the ultimate price for adult assumptions about what constitutes safe enough. If this story disturbs you, it should, because somewhere right now, another family is walking through those same gates, trusting that every ride has been properly maintained, every safety system has been tested, and every possible danger has been eliminated. They deserve to know the truth about what happened to Liam Ford and why his death was not just a tragic accident, but a preventable catastrophe that exposed fundamental flaws in how we protect our most vulnerable visitors. Disneyland had always prided itself on being more than just an amusement park. Since its opening in 1955, it had cultivated an image of wholesome family entertainment where cutting-edge technology merged seamlessly with storytelling magic. By the time the Ford family arrived on that fateful September morning in 2019, the park was welcoming over 18 million visitors annually, each one trusting in Disney's legendary attention to detail and safety. The ride that would forever change the Ford family's life was the Adventureland Explorer, a boat ride that had been a park staple for over 2 decades. Marketed as a gentle journey through exotic landscapes suitable for all ages, it featured animatronic animals, artificial waterfalls, and carefully choreographed scenes designed to transport riders to far-off lands. The boats, each capable of holding 24 passengers, glided along a hidden track system beneath murky water that was intentionally darkened to hide the mechanical components below. What most visitors didn't know was that the Adventureland Explorer had been experiencing increasing mechanical issues over the past 3 years. Internal maintenance reports, later obtained through legal proceedings, revealed a troubling pattern of problems with the underwater track system. Sensors designed to detect obstructions were malfunctioning with increasing frequency. Emergency stop mechanisms were sluggish to respond. The boats themselves were showing signs of structural wear that went beyond normal aging. The problems had started small. In 2016, a boat had briefly derailed from its track, causing a minor delay that was explained to guests as technical difficulties. No one was injured, and the incident report filed by maintenance staff was marked as resolved after a quick inspection. What the report didn't mention was that the underlying cause of the derailment, a worn guide rail that had been scheduled for replacement 2 years earlier, remained unaddressed. By 2018, the issues were escalating. Maintenance logs showed that emergency stop tests were failing at a rate 3 times higher than park safety standard allowed. The boat's hull integrity was compromised in several units, with hairline cracks appearing near the guide wheel assemblies. Most concerning were reports from ride operators about unusual noises coming from beneath the water, grinding sounds that suggested metal-on-metal contact where there should have been smooth operation. Miguel Rodriguez, a veteran ride operator with 15 years of experience, had filed multiple concerns about the Adventureland Explorer. His reports, written in increasingly urgent language, documented boats that were floating off-center, making contact with underwater obstacles, and showing signs of guidance system failure. His September 2018 report concluded with a stark warning. Recommend immediate comprehensive inspection of entire track system. Current conditions present potential for serious incident. The response from park management was typical of an organization more concerned with operational efficiency than addressing systematic problems. Rather than scheduling the recommended comprehensive inspection, which would have required closing the ride for several days, they authorized only minor repairs during regular overnight maintenance windows. The phrase that appeared repeatedly in management responses was "within acceptable parameters," a clinical way of saying the ride was safe enough to continue operating. But acceptable parameters are defined by human beings, and human beings can be wrong. The safety standards that deemed the Adventureland Explorer fit for operation were based on assumptions about the ride's original design specifications. They didn't account for 2 decades of wear, thousands of daily cycles, or the cumulative effect of deferred maintenance. They certainly didn't account for what would happen if multiple safety systems failed simultaneously. The Ford family knew none of this when they boarded the Adventureland Explorer at 2:47 p.m. on September 15, 2019. Robert and Jennifer Ford, along with their children Liam and his younger sister Emma, were enjoying their 3rd day at the park. They had already experienced the ride twice during their vacation, and 8-year-old Liam had declared his favorite. He loved the moment when the boats passed through a misty cavern filled with glowing eyes and mysterious sounds. Security camera footage would later show Liam bouncing excitedly as his family waited in the loading area. He was wearing his favorite Mickey Mouse t-shirt and a pair of light-up sneakers that flashed with each step. His mother had applied sunscreen to his freckled nose just minutes before, laughing as he squirmed impatiently. His father was recording video on his phone, capturing what he thought would be another happy memory of their vacation. As their boat pulled up to the loading platform, ride operator Samantha Chen performed the standard safety check. She ensured all passengers were seated, reminded them to remain seated throughout the ride, and verified that the lap bars were properly positioned. What she couldn't check, what no one could see, was the catastrophic failure developing in the track system 30 feet ahead, where years of deferred maintenance were about to converge in a perfect storm of mechanical failure. The boats on the Adventureland Explorer were designed with multiple redundant safety systems. If the primary guidance system failed, backup rails were supposed to keep the boat on course. If those failed, emergency flotation chambers would prevent the boat from submerging. If those failed, underwater sensors would trigger an automatic system shutdown. But redundancy only works when each component is properly maintained, and the maintenance records told a story of systematic neglect justified by spreadsheets and budget constraints. Beneath the murky water, where no guest could see, the track system that had guided boats safely for 20 years was reaching a critical failure point. Metal fatigue had created stress fractures in key support structures. Corrosion had weakened emergency guide rails. Sediment buildup had compromised sensor functionality. Each issue alone might have been manageable. Together, they created a disaster waiting for the worst possible moment to reveal itself. As the Ford family's boat lurched forward from the loading platform, beginning what should have been a gentle 12-minute journey through manufactured wonder, 8-year-old Liam Ford had exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds left to live. The grinding noise that veteran operators had reported was about to become something far worse, and all the corporate assurances about acceptable parameters were about to be exposed as the dangerous fiction they had always been. The first sign that something was wrong came at 2:51 p.m., exactly 4 minutes after the Ford family's boat had left the loading platform. Lisa Martinez, a guest in the boat directly behind them, would later testify that she heard a sound like metal tearing, followed by a sudden jolt that threw passengers forward in their seats. The automated audio track continued playing its cheerful narrative about jungle adventures, creating a surreal contrast to the mechanical violence occurring beneath the water surface. In the Ford family's boat, the failure began with a shudder that ran through the vessel's frame. Robert Ford instinctively reached for his children as the boat lurched sideways, deviating from its intended path. Other passengers gasped and grabbed their armrests, assuming this unexpected movement was part of the ride experience. Even Samantha Chun, monitoring from the control station, initially dismissed the boat's erratic movement as a minor track irregularity that would self-correct. But 250 feet into the ride, where the channel narrowed between artificial rock formations, the catastrophic failure reached its climax. The primary guide rail, weakened by years of corrosion and metal fatigue, snapped completely. The 8,000-pound boat, suddenly freed from its track, slammed into the concrete channel wall with tremendous force. The impact cracked the already compromised hull along a stress fracture that maintenance reports had identified but never properly addressed. Water began rushing into the boat's lower compartments, causing it to lift dramatically to the starboard side. The emergency flotation systems, clogged with 2 decades of sediment and debris, failed to deploy. Passengers screamed as the boat tilted at an increasingly alarming angle, water pouring over the lower edge and beginning to flood the seating area. "Get the kids up! Get them high!" someone shouted. Robert Ford lifted Emma onto his shoulders while Jennifer grabbed Liam, trying to move him to the higher side of the tilting boat. But in the chaos and confusion, with water rushing in and passengers scrambling over each other, 8-year-old Liam's small frame slipped from his mother's grasp. What happened next would haunt Jennifer Ford for the rest of her life. As she reached for her son, the boat lurched again, this time capsizing partially as its weight distribution shifted catastrophically. Liam, wearing his light-up sneakers that now seemed to mock the darkness of the moment, was pulled under the tilting vessel by the rush of water. His terrified scream was cut short as he disappeared beneath the boat's hull. "My son! My baby!" Jennifer's anguished cries pierced through the chaos. Robert Ford immediately dove into the murky water, desperately searching for Liam in the dark space beneath the overturned section of the boat. Other passengers tried to help, but the combination of muddy water, mechanical debris, and the boat's unstable position made rescue attempts nearly impossible. In the control room, Samantha Chen's training kicked in as she initiated emergency protocols. She hit the system-wide emergency stop, radioed for immediate assistance, and activated the ride's drainage pumps. But the emergency systems, like everything else on the Adventureland Explorer, had been compromised by years of inadequate maintenance. The drainage pumps operated at less than 40% capacity. The emergency stop mechanism took 47 seconds to fully engage instead of the required 10 seconds. Security footage from multiple angles captured the horrific scene as park emergency responders arrived at 2:54 p.m. The partially capsized boat had pinned Liam Ford against a concrete guide wall beneath several feet of water. His small body was trapped in a space no adult could reach, wedged between the boat's hull and the channel's infrastructure. The design that had seemed so clever, hiding all mechanical components beneath opaque water, now became a deadly obstacle to rescue efforts. Dive team member Carlos Reyes was the first to reach Liam's position. In his incident report, he described finding the boy unresponsive, trapped in a cavity approximately 18 inches wide, with the boat's weight preventing any movement of his body. The position made it impossible to provide air or establish any life-saving contact. The rescue team faced an agonizing decision: attempt to move the 8,000-pound boat and risk crushing injuries, or work to cut through the hull while precious seconds ticked away. Park visitors lined the ride's perimeter, many recording the unfolding tragedy on their phones despite staff attempts to clear the area. The sounds of power tools cutting through fiberglass mixed with Jennifer Ford's inconsolable sobbing and the shouts of rescue workers. Emma Ford, only 5 years old, kept asking where her brother was, her innocent questions adding another layer of heartbreak to the scene. It took 23 minutes to cut through the boat's hull and create an opening large enough to extract Liam. By the time paramedics pulled his small body from the water at 3:17 p.m., he had been submerged for over 25 minutes. The paramedics worked frantically, performing CPR on his still form as they rushed him to the waiting ambulance. Water poured from his lungs with each compression, his Mickey Mouse shirt torn and stained with hydraulic fluid from the damaged machinery. The ambulance departed Disneyland at 3:24 p.m. with a full police escort, sirens wailing as it raced toward Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Inside, paramedics continued their desperate efforts to revive Liam Ford. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low, and despite their best efforts, they could detect no signs of neurological activity. Jennifer and Robert Ford followed in a separate vehicle, their vacation clothes still soaked with the same murky water that had claimed their son. At 3:52 p.m., Dr. Patricia Hammond made the official pronouncement at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Liam Ford, age 8, was declared dead from drowning secondary to traumatic entrapment. The official cause of death was clinical, sterile, and wholly inadequate to capture the magnitude of what had occurred. A little boy who had woken up that morning excited about another day at Disneyland was gone, victim of a preventable tragedy that exposed the fatal consequences of prioritizing profits over people. Back at Disneyland, the Adventureland Explorer remained frozen in its moment of disaster. The partially capsized boat sat like a wounded animal in the narrow channel, surrounded by the debris of rescue efforts. Water continued to leak from damaged pumps. The cheerful audio track had finally been silenced, replaced by the static of emergency radios and the quiet conversations of investigators beginning to piece together how a routine ride on a safe attraction had become a death trap. The immediate aftermath was a case study in corporate crisis management. Within an hour of Liam's death, Disneyland's legal team had arrived on scene. The ride was immediately closed for maintenance, with no mention of the tragedy that had just occurred. Witnesses were quickly ushered to private areas where they were offered counseling, refreshments, and carefully worded documents to sign. The message was clear: contain the story, control the narrative, minimize the damage. But some stories are too big to contain. By evening, social media was flooded with videos of the rescue effort. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting images of the abandoned boat and the army of investigators now swarming the ride. The hashtag Disneyland tragedy began trending worldwide, and with it came questions that Disneyland would struggle to answer. How could this happen at the happiest place on Earth? Why did safety systems fail so catastrophically? And who was responsible for the death of Liam Ford? The investigation into Liam Ford's death began even before his family had left the hospital. While the Fords sat in a sterile waiting room, struggling to comprehend a reality where their son no longer existed, teams of investigators descended upon the Adventureland Explorer. What they found over the following weeks would reveal a systematic failure that extended far beyond a single ride malfunction. California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, Cal/OSHA, Inspector Rebecca Liu led the technical investigation. Her team's preliminary findings, delivered just 72 hours after the incident, were damning. The guide rail failure that initiated the tragedy showed clear signs of long-term metal fatigue that should have been detected during routine inspections. Corrosion had reduced the rail's structural integrity by over 60%. Most troubling, tool marks on the rail indicated that maintenance workers had attempted crude repairs rather than replacing the component entirely. The investigation expanded as inspectors discovered the depth of the maintenance failures. Emergency flotation chambers in not just the accident boat, but in the entire fleet were found to be non-functional. Supposed quarterly inspections had been reduced to visual checks that couldn't detect the sediment buildup preventing deployment. Water pump systems designed to quickly drain ride channels in emergencies operated at a fraction of their intended capacity, clogged with years of accumulated debris. Former Disneyland maintenance engineer Thomas Park came forward as a whistleblower, providing investigators with internal emails and documentation that painted a picture of systematic neglect driven by cost-cutting measures. His records showed that critical maintenance had been repeatedly deferred, with management consistently choosing minimal repairs over comprehensive refurbishment. One email from a senior manager stated bluntly, "We need to keep Explorer operational through peak season. Patch what you can, we'll address larger issues in the off-season." That off-season overhaul never came. The investigation revealed that Disneyland had implemented a new maintenance scheduling system in 2017 that prioritized rides based on a complex algorithm considering factors like revenue generation, guest satisfaction scores, and operational costs. The Adventureland Explorer, as an older attraction with steady but not spectacular attendance, had been systematically deprioritized. Critical safety inspections were reclassified as routine maintenance to allow longer intervals between checks. Internal documents subpoenaed during the investigation showed that park management was well aware of the deteriorating conditions. A June 2019 report from the maintenance department explicitly stated, "Explorers showing multiple critical failure points. Recommend immediate comprehensive overhaul or temporary closure." The report was annotated with a handwritten note from a senior executive. "Can we get through summer season? Closure would impact revenue projections." The Ford family, devastated by their loss, hired attorney David Nguyen to pursue justice for Liam. Nguyen, a specialist in amusement park litigation, had seen similar cases throughout his career, but the extent of negligence in the Adventureland Explorer incident shocked even him. "This wasn't a tragic accident," he stated at a press conference 6 weeks after Liam's death. "This was corporate manslaughter, plain and simple. Every safety decision was filtered through the lens of profit margins." The legal proceedings revealed additional disturbing details. Disneyland's own insurance assessments had flagged the Adventureland Explorer as a high-risk attraction requiring immediate attention. Rather than address the issues, park executives had negotiated with insurers to accept higher premiums in exchange for delayed repairs. They had literally calculated that paying more for insurance was cheaper than fixing known safety hazards. Employee depositions painted a picture of a workplace where safety concerns were actively discouraged. Maria Gonzalez, a ride operator with 8 years of experience, testified that she had been written up for excessive safety reports after documenting concerns about the Explorer. "They told me I was being too paranoid, that I was creating unnecessary paperwork," she recalled through tears. "They said the ride had operated safely for 20 years, and I needed to trust the system." The criminal investigation, led by Orange County District Attorney Patricia Williams, faced the challenge of proving criminal negligence in a corporate environment designed to diffuse responsibility. While the evidence clearly showed a pattern of deferred maintenance and ignored warnings, identifying specific individuals responsible for criminal charges proved difficult. The decision-making process was spread across multiple departments and management levels, with each person claiming they were following established procedures. Public outcry grew as details of the investigation leaked to the media. Parents who had taken their children on the Adventureland Explorer shared stories of close calls they had dismissed at the time, boats bumping roughly, strange noises from below, moments when the ride seemed to malfunction before correcting itself. Social media campaigns with hashtags like #JusticeForLiam and #DisneylandDangers gained millions of followers, putting unprecedented pressure on both the company and regulators. The Orange County Coroner's report, released 3 months after Liam's death, provided clinical details that haunted his family. The 8-year-old had survived underwater for approximately 12 minutes before drowning, his small body survival instincts keeping him alive far longer than typical in such circumstances. The report noted defensive wounds on his hands from trying to free himself, and bruising patterns that suggested he had fought desperately to escape his trap. These details, while necessary for the legal record, added immeasurable pain to his family's grief. Disneyland's initial response to the tragedy followed a predictable corporate playbook. They expressed deepest sympathies while maintaining that safety was their top priority. They announced a voluntary suspension of the Adventureland Explorer, pending a comprehensive review. They pledged to work closely with investigators, while their legal team worked behind the scenes to limit liability and control the narrative. But as evidence mounted and public anger grew, the carefully crafted corporate response began to crumble. Internal emails leaked to the press showed executives more concerned with stock prices than safety improvements. A recorded conference call captured senior management discussing how to minimize negative publicity impact while making only cosmetic changes to safety protocols. The disconnect between public statements and private actions fueled demands for accountability. 6 months after Liam Ford's death, Cal/OSHA issued its final report along with the largest fine in the agency's history, $12.5 million for willful safety violations. The report documented 89 separate safety violations related to the Adventureland Explorer alone, with inspectors noting that similar maintenance failures likely existed throughout the park. The agency mandated immediate inspections of all attractions and gave Disneyland 90 days to submit comprehensive safety improvement plans. The criminal investigation culminated in unprecedented charges against both the corporation and individual executives. 3 senior managers were charged with involuntary manslaughter for their roles in deferring critical maintenance despite known risks. Disneyland Corporation faced criminal negligence charges that could result in fines exceeding $100 million. While no amount of legal action could bring Liam back, his family hoped the proceedings would prevent similar tragedies. The death of Liam Ford became a watershed moment for the theme park industry worldwide. What had been dismissed as a tragic but isolated incident evolved into a comprehensive examination of safety practices, maintenance protocols, and the inherent conflict between profit margins and public safety. The ripple effects of that September afternoon extended far beyond Disneyland's gates, forcing a reckoning with decades of assumptions about what constituted acceptable risk. Dr. James Mitchell, a professor of engineering ethics at MIT, who was called as an expert witness in the Ford case, summarized the fundamental issue. The theme park industry had developed a dangerous mythology around their own safety record. They confused an absence of recent catastrophes with evidence of adequate safety measures. Liam Ford's death exposed how thin the margins really were between normal operation and disaster. In the immediate aftermath, theme parks across the nation scrambled to inspect their aging attractions. What they found was troubling. A joint investigation by the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions revealed that over 60% of rides more than 15 years old showed signs of deferred maintenance similar to the Adventureland Explorer. The industry had been operating on borrowed time, with countless attractions one component failure away from tragedy. California led the charge in regulatory reform. Liam's Law, passed unanimously by the state legislature, mandated quarterly third-party inspections of all amusement park rides, required public disclosure of maintenance records, and established criminal penalties for executives who knowingly deferred critical safety repairs. The law also created a whistleblower protection program for employees who reported safety concerns, addressing the culture of silence that had allowed dangerous conditions to persist. The reforms spread nationally as other states recognized the inadequacy of their own oversight. Federal legislation, though more limited in scope, established minimum safety standards and created a national database of ride incidents, ending the industry's ability to hide patterns of failure across state lines. For the first time, a ride's complete safety history would follow it from park to park, state to state. Within Disneyland itself, the changes were dramatic and costly. The company invested over $500 million in comprehensive safety upgrades, not just addressing deferred maintenance, but implementing new technologies that could predict component failures before they occurred. Every ride underwent forensic inspection. Those that couldn't be brought to modern safety standards were permanently closed, regardless of their historical significance or popularity. The cultural transformation proved even more challenging than the technical fixes. Disneyland instituted mandatory safety training for all employees, from senior executives to seasonal workers. A new position, Chief Safety Officer, was created with direct reporting authority to the Board of Directors, bypassing the traditional management structure that had prioritized operations over safety. Anonymous safety reporting systems were implemented, with financial rewards for employees who identified potential hazards. Robert and Jennifer Ford, while devastated by their loss, channeled their grief into advocacy. The Liam Ford Foundation, established with funds from their legal settlement, provided grants for independent safety inspections at smaller parks that couldn't afford comprehensive reviews. They traveled the country, speaking to industry conferences and regulatory bodies, sharing their story to prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedies. Liam loved theme parks. Jennifer Ford explained at one such gathering, her voice steady despite the pain evident in her eyes. He believed in the magic, in the idea that these places were special, safe spaces where kids could just be kids. We can't bring him back, but we can make sure his death means something, that it marks the end of prioritizing profits over children's lives. The Foundation's work revealed how widespread the problems were. Small regional parks, operating on thin margins, had even worse maintenance records than major destinations. Many relied on outdated inspection protocols that hadn't been updated in decades. The Foundation's grants funded inspections that identified and corrected thousands of potentially fatal hazards, from corroded structural supports to faulty safety restraints. Industry resistance to reform gradually gave way to recognition that change was inevitable. Insurance companies, faced with massive potential liabilities, began requiring stricter safety protocols as a condition of coverage. Parks that had fought regulation found themselves embracing it as a shield against litigation. The calculation that had killed Liam Ford, that deferred maintenance was cheaper than proper repairs, reversed as the true costs of negligence became apparent. 5 years after Liam's death, the theme park industry looked fundamentally different. Rides operated with redundant safety systems that were genuinely redundant, not compromised by decades of neglect. Maintenance schedules were publicly posted and rigorously enforced. A new generation of ride operators, trained in a culture that prioritized safety over efficiency, questioned and reported hazards that would have been ignored in the past. The Adventureland Explorer never reopened. The space it once occupied was transformed into a memorial garden, a quiet space within the bustling park where families could rest and reflect. A bronze plaque at the garden's entrance bore Liam Ford's name and the simple inscription, "In memory of all children whose trust we must never betray." It became an unofficial pilgrimage site for park employees, a reminder of the weight of their responsibilities. Dr. Sarah Chun, a child psychologist who worked with the Ford family and other survivors of the incident, noted the broader impact on how society views supposedly safe spaces. Liam's death shattered a collective illusion. Parents who had never questioned theme park safety suddenly realized they had been trusting their children's lives to systems they didn't understand. It forced a healthy but painful reconsideration of blind trust in corporate assurances. The legal proceedings stretched for years, with criminal trials resulting in guilty verdicts for 2 senior executives who received prison sentences for involuntary manslaughter. Disneyland Corporation pled no contest to criminal negligence charges, accepting responsibility while avoiding the spectacle of a prolonged corporate criminal trial. The financial penalties, exceeding $200 million, funded expanded safety oversight programs and victim compensation funds. But for the Ford family, no amount of money or systemic change could fill the void left by Liam. Emma Ford, now a teenager, struggled with survivor's guilt and the trauma of witnessing her brother's death. She underwent years of therapy and eventually became an advocate herself, speaking to young people about the importance of questioning authority and demanding accountability from institutions that claim to protect them. Robert Ford left his corporate job to work full-time on safety advocacy, becoming a technical expert on ride inspection protocols. He could often be found at industry conferences, patiently explaining to executives and engineers how small decisions compound into catastrophic failures. His presentations always included a photo of Liam in his Mickey Mouse shirt, a reminder that behind every statistic was a child who trusted adults to keep them safe. The transformation of theme park safety culture extended beyond hardware and protocols to fundamental questions about corporate responsibility. Business schools added the Liam Ford case to their ethics curricula, examining how incremental compromises and diffused decision-making could lead to tragedy. The phrase, normalization of deviance, the gradual acceptance of lower standards, became a watchword in industries far beyond theme parks. 10 years after that September afternoon, theme parks were statistically safer than they had ever been. Ride-related fatalities had dropped by 94%, with the remaining incidents typically involving guest misconduct rather than mechanical failures. The industry had learned, at terrible cost, that true safety required constant vigilance, substantial investment, and a culture that valued lives over profit margins. Yet the Ford family's advocacy continued, driven by the knowledge that safety reforms often fade when public attention moves elsewhere. They worked to ensure that Liam's law was strengthened rather than weakened over time, fighting industry lobbying efforts to reduce inspection frequencies or limit liability. They understood that the price of safety was eternal vigilance, that each new generation of executives and engineers needed to learn the lessons written in their son's blood. Liam Ford should be 18 years old now. He should be preparing for college, learning to drive, experiencing first loves and heartbreaks. Instead, he remains forever 8 in his family's memories, forever wearing that Mickey Mouse shirt, forever excited about one more ride on the Adventureland Explorer. His death stands as a permanent reminder that when we prioritize efficiency over safety, when we normalize deviance and ignore warning signs, we risk sacrificing those who trust us most completely, our children. The theme park industry has fundamentally changed because of Liam Ford's death, but the broader lessons extend far beyond roller coasters and water rides. Every industry that holds human lives in its hands must constantly guard against the slow erosion of safety standards, the temptation to defer maintenance, the dangerous belief that past success guarantees future safety. Whether it's bridges or buildings, airplanes or automobiles, medical devices or manufactured products, the same forces that killed Liam Ford operate wherever human beings make decisions about acceptable risk. His legacy lives on not just in the laws and regulations that bear his name, but in every ride that operates safely because someone remembered his story and chose caution over convenience. Every child who returns home safely from a theme park owes a debt to a boy they never knew, whose death forced an industry to confront its failures and commit to genuine change. The Ford family continues their work, knowing that safety is not a destination, but a journey requiring constant vigilance. They carry their grief with dignity, transforming unimaginable loss into purposeful action. In their words, "We cannot bring Liam back, but we can ensure his death was not meaningless." Every child saved by stronger safety measures is a victory Liam would have celebrated. That's how we choose to honor him, not just with tears, but with change. The Adventureland Explorer incident remains a watershed moment in industrial safety history, proof that even in places designed for joy and wonder, vigilance must never cease. The price of a child's laughter should never be a child's life. That's the lesson written in the tragedy of Liam Ford, a lesson the world must never forget.